Hey guys.
Brother.
Hey guys, welcome back to Approach the Nerd. It is Maria Park. I'm here with Joe from Joe's Geek Show. Please like and
Hello.
subscribe his channel. We are here to talk about a show that I don't feel is obscure, but I guess if you've never watched it through Prime or FX, well, technically it's FX through Prime, then you probably haven't heard of it. It is the Russo brothers' latest iteration since Lost. It is absolutely insane. It is absolutely captivating. It is actually something I'm addicted to. So we and Joe both waited for season 1 to end so we could talk about it because we have lots to talk about in this show. But yeah, it is called From. And I know the title even seems obscure and like you're just like, what does this even mean?
Yeah.
But
Don't just Google From TV show. You're gonna get back so many search results that have nothing to do with the show.
Yeah, if you want some more information on it, make sure you put in Epics and then From TV and it'll bring up. But so a really brief summary, how they actually describe the show is the Matthews family's road trip takes a horrifying turn where they're detoured to a small pastoral town from which they cannot leave. When their family RV crashes, Sheriff Boyd Stevens and other residents rush to save them before the sun goes down. That is literally the description. So what you learn later on is the reason that they're trying to get them before the sun goes down is because for some reason these horrible creatures at night who masquerade as very pale, smiley humans eat people. That's basically what they do. They devour people. Only come out at night that we know of so far. But it is absolutely insane. So yeah, so this show for me, honestly, when I first saw the trailer, I was thinking, it might be okay. But then when I talked to Joe and he was talking about it, when you said you were watching it, I'm like, let's just give the first episode a try. And then that turned into 2 episodes, and that turned into 5 episodes, and then turned into 2 episodes. I will
say, I am so glad that we were actually late to the show so we could binge it up to a certain point.
Yeah,
because especially waiting those last 3 episodes out was just fucking.
That was rough. That was rough because I think they came out on when they were released on Wednesdays. If I'm not Wednesdays or Thursdays, I can't remember.
What was it? I was watching it every Sunday, I think.
Sunday. I think for me it was on Thursdays for some reason. I don't know if it maybe being in Japan was different. That's weird. But I do know that I would get an alert on my phone whenever a new episode would come out, and I was like, oh, and then it would drive me nuts because me and my spouse always watch the shows that we like together. So when I had to wait for River to get off work so we can watch the episode, I'm like, it's on right now. But so we're introduced to a lot of characters in this series. They have Harold Perrineau, I think that's how you say his last name. He was from Lost, and he's like one of the main characters in this. Yeah, he plays basically Sheriff Boyd Stevens. And we start learning a lot about the different characters in this town. And essentially, everyone's come to this town from a different point throughout the U.S. And for some reason, they're all driving down this road. They get stopped because there's like a tree blocking their way. They get out of the car. They see crows around. And then they end up at the town. And then they spend a lot of their time driving in a circle, because they think they're leaving the town, but they're essentially coming straight back. All roads lead right back to that town. They are literally stuck in this town with no way out. And then on top of that, there's the creatures that are trying to get them at night. And so going into it, you're kind of like you're dealing with the fact that there is a real, nefarious threat with these creatures. But then on top of that, why are they there? What brought them there? There's so many little mini mysteries. What are the creatures? Why are they there? We learned throughout the series that through Sheriff Stevens, he found these totems and he just happened to have them with him when the creatures were out. He fell down a hole, basically, and the creatures couldn't touch him because he had all these totems. So he takes the totems, like basically back to the town, and all of them use them by hanging them in their house to keep the creatures out at night. And they can't come in unless you let them in if you have the totems in the house. So it's very interesting. But being part indigenous, I never telling Joe, I'm like, this is playing to my indigenous part side, because the totems, the writing, all of that could be Lakota or Navajo. And you had a theory too, that you thought maybe it was skinwalkers. I believe.
Well, no, you said
No, I said
skinwalkers.
skinwalkers. You said
I came
Wendigos.
up with the theory that they were Wendigos.
Yeah. I absolutely think that they are skinwalkers, just by definition, by the fact that I think there's a lot of indigenous or Native American, lore in this.
Definitely very Native American.
So yeah, my theory is from, if you even watch the original Poltergeist movie, if you build a town on sacred ground,
it's not gonna go well.
It's not gonna go well for you. So in my mind, what's happening is I feel like that there was a tribe there. Maybe some colonists came in, killed them off. Maybe there was a survivor, cursed the land with skinwalkers, and the skinwalkers are basically drawing people in that dare to cross that land. Because I think you really just have to cross it, like get into the range of where that land, like the border over that land is, and you are essentially sucked into this world where you are basically gonna be set up to die.
Yeah, we do have some theories on that too a little bit later in the video. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we definitely do. But I kind of feel like I think there's a lot going on, because as the series progresses, no one's ever really gone through the forest like completely. They've never really, which makes sense because you don't want to cut out in the forest at night. You go out there, something happens, you break a leg or whatever, you're just basically you're food for these.
It's a death sentence, effectively. They even said it a few times, like going out at night in the forest and stuff. Yeah, it's a death sentence.
It's a no-no. It is a no-no, yeah. So, but eventually Sheriff Boyd Stevens decides to just risk it and go out there. And then we're introduced to the fact that there are scarier things than the skinwalkers or wendigos or whatever these creatures are out there. And so now we're like, what is actually happening in this town? There's so many elements that they throw in there. At one point, we actually thought there were UFOs involved, because we saw really weird flashing lights, or the military.
So weird if they'd gone with it, though.
Yeah, it's just.
I'm glad they showed us what was making the light eventually, and I was just like,
it was a light. It's a lighthouse.
Would have been a little extreme. I mean, it almost. If they had gone the UFO route, it honestly reminds me of when I listened to Robert Kirkman talk about how he pitched The Walking Dead, and originally he actually lied to get into Image Comics. He's like, yeah, no, it's going to be a zombie comic, but it's going to be actually. It turns out that the aliens created the zombie virus to try to wipe out humanity, and so when all humanity's dead, the aliens are going to come down and do all that, and then of course when the first issue came out, one of the guys he was talking to, I think it was Eric Larson or something, read the comic. He's like, hey, great comic. But I didn't see any of the subtle hints about there being an alien invasion coming in. And he's like, oh, yeah, no, I just lied about that to get the job.
Yeah.
And I was like,
dang. Well, I think we should talk about some of the characters. We already we talked about the Harold Perrineau, who again,
a little bit about the
alumni. He plays Sheriff Boyd Stevens. The reason he's the town sheriff is when he got there, he's ex-military and he was a strategist in the military. So he was the one that actually set up rescues, Afghanistan and things like that. So very, pretty efficient character, very, very good at leadership. He came to town with his wife, Abby, who was a Marine and badass, and then of course his son. During their time when he was helping to organize stuff, because when they first got to town, it was in the earlier days. Not as early as another character, which we'll talk about in a second, but it was in the earlier days where basically the townspeople have built little man-made shelters under the grass and put fake grass on top of it. And so at night, when the creatures would come out, they would be standing in this place with the grass over, hoping that they're not found, basically. And it worked for the most part. But this is before they discovered the totems. But when he got there, he basically started organizing stuff, like basically telling them, hey, we need to start moving where we go. So we have less likelihood, now maybe everyone's not just hauled up in these same shelters every night. We need to actually make it hard for them to find us, basically. And then bringing them together to take all of their resources from the cars that they had and their food, which I will say, Joe, they had an unlimited amount of food. I don't know if you noticed this, like having that cafe and all that and being able to serve people breakfast and all this. It's like they never really ran out of food. And it was really interesting for me to see how many people were coming in the town, and you would think that a lot of them would only have like gas, snacks, snacks from the gas station or whatever, but they were having like pancakes and like chicken and like all this stuff.
Yeah. Well, if I'm not mistaken, though, the whole diner segment that didn't come till after Sheriff Boy is like, "Hey, there's animals out in the forest." Like, yeah, they found chickens, they got goats, and
and I know that they were growing vegetables and stuff. It was just very interesting.
Vegetables. So I will say, getting pancakes with a side of eggs, it doesn't seem that difficult at that point.
Just thinking about in terms of the crops, though, like what they were farming and stuff, they seem to have a lot more in that cafe.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you're talking about the output that they had.
Yeah, the output and the amount of people. Yeah, I was like, I had to suspend my disbelief a little bit to think that they had that much food. And then you also have to think about the fact that they're split. So they had people that were considered a colony house, and then the townsies. Yeah. So people who lived in the houses in the town, and then people that lived in this one big party Woodstock colony house where they partied.
That was a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah. So, for a while it worked, but I mean, and I get the need for it, but I think we'll get into that in a second. But let's talk about the characters. So we have Boyd and his wife Abby and his son. And this town has a way of picking certain people and driving them crazy. And so Abby basically became crazy. And then one day she just started shooting the townspeople, and she was about to shoot their son, and Boyd had to shoot his own wife. And it made a rift between him and his son. Even though he saved his son's life, his son then chose to go live in Colony House instead of staying in the house with him. So there was basically a wedge between them because of that traumatic moment. So we did learn that earlier on, that him and his son were not talking, basically.
Right.
Then we meet the Matthews. We have Jim Matthew, his wife Tabitha, his daughter Julie, and his son Ethan. They were on a road trip, but basically it was the last family vacation before the parents were basically getting divorced. The daughter figured it out. The young son Ethan did not yet. And the reason that we learned they were going to get divorced is not because they didn't love each other anymore, but because they lost a baby due to a changing table incident. They had the baby on the changing table. I guess the phone rang. The father turned to answer the phone. She turned to get another diaper or something. The baby literally fell, and we're assuming cracked its head open and died. And the mother couldn't handle it, and she couldn't look at the husband without seeing the baby. And so this was their last family trip before they divorced. But then they get stuck here. So basically their family honestly was better off being here because it actually brought them closer together. Even when the daughter, who was so tired of the drama in the family, went to stay at Colony House, I mean, it just felt like all of them being there saved their family. So it seems like there were some positives in this world of like horrific stuff, basically. They were more bonded as a family. Now, when the family got there, they were already having a funeral. And what happened was there was a family. It was a father, a mother, and a young daughter. And the father was basically an alcoholic, which I guess if you live in a place,
I wouldn't even say basically. He was a bit drunk.
He was a drunk.
He hit the bottle and he just stayed there.
Yeah, he did. But I guess if you're living in this situation where like legit, these things are eating people at night, and you're always living in fear of being eaten. Some people turn to alcohol for less. Let's put it that way.
I mean, living in this town like that, though, I could say I could go to the bar during the day, maybe a couple of drinks, take the edge off a little bit, but my ass gonna be back at home at night. I'm not gonna get like passed out drunk because I'm like, shit, my family,
Yeah, but unfortunately, at this point, though, when you're a full-on flaming alcoholic, you don't have this moralistic code,
Oh, yeah, no, he was gone.
The bottle was his friend. It was his coping. It was what he did, right? Mm-hmm. So it's interesting that while he was getting shit-faced, basically, The mother and the daughter were at home. They had their talisman on the wall. The mother was locking up. She was kind of irritated the husband hadn't come home yet again. And the daughter was upstairs to bed. Now, I'm going to just put this out here as a parent. As somebody who raised a child for almost 26 years, there's no universe where I would ever let my child be alone in a situation like this. Let me tell you why. Lack of common sense. Kids do not have common sense. I don't mean to put it out there like that, but it's absolutely true. I'm not saying they're not intelligent. I'm not saying they're not smart. Now, they have this innocence about them, even in the most horriblest of circumstances. And so this child went up to her room and she saw a woman who looked like her grandmother talking to her through the window saying, "Hey, will you let me in?" And even when the mother came upstairs in time and said, "Hey, don't do this." I think her name was Megan, I believe. Megan or Molly. I think it was Megan. She's like, "Megan, don't do this. Don't let her in." The child's like, "But it's grandma." And then she opens the window and then they literally get torn apart. And we see the next morning when the husband's coming home shit-faced and everybody's standing outside of his house that the mother and the daughter were dead. And they actually showed the daughter with her guts all out, and the mother
cavity was open and stuff, which I'm gotta say, good makeup effects on that.
Yeah, and interesting to me is because he did that, because he got so drunk and his family got killed, he had to go in what they call the box. So basically, the sheriff's even decided to build a box in the middle of town to put people in if they effed up, and him abandoning his family for the bottle was actually, I guess, in this town, reason enough for him to be put in the box without a talisman to be torn apart by these creatures. And the sheriff himself didn't want to go through with it. He's like, "This is barbaric. We're living in very horrific times. This is not normal. People are going to do shit, But the priest, there's a priest. His name is Father Katari. And he was like, "No, if you do this, if you don't put him in the box, then everyone's going to think you're weak and they're not going to listen to you." And I'm like, it's so weird to have a pastor be pro-murder.
He probably summed it up the best. I really liked his dialogue in that scene too. Is like, you built a guillotine in the middle of town square.
Yeah.
You need to use it when people step out of line.
And again, I get that he was saying we want to be able to keep people in check because, once people start flipping out, it's chaos. We understand that. Yep. But, at the same time, the guy had already lost his wife and his daughter, and now you're going to let him be ripped apart. And the sheriff did actually feel bad and gave him a talisman and told him to go to this cabin in the middle of the woods, and just basically live your life and good luck, because he didn't want to do it. But the guy decided to allow himself to be ripped apart because he felt so guilty that he wasn't there and his wife and daughter died that he just did it. And it was horrific. It was, they showed the things talking and crawling, and then they see one of them bust through the wall of the thing. Mm-hmm. And then the next morning you see all of this. He's just been ripped apart.
Just massacred. There's nothing
completely massacred. And I am looking at your comments, so we'll get to that in a second. But so that was like one of the biggest things for me. I'm like, wow, this is messed up. This whole thing is messed up.
Well, my whole thing too is back with that whole thing. Like, even though he was passed out drunk, I'm like, why wasn't the windows nailed shut?
Yeah. Well, and then they actually said that. Remember, the sheriff said, "Why didn't
point that out?" It's like,
he did point that out. Why didn't you nail the windows shut? And I guess for me also, I'm just going to put that out there. It made it seem like the mother was incompetent because why couldn't she nail the windows shut?
Exactly. It's like it's like, okay, my husband's basically useless right now, so it kind of all falls on me. They definitely kind of made it seem like she was
useless. Very dependent.
They did kind of present her being a little more useless, which was really weird. Yeah. Like, she seemed very kind of upright, maybe highly religious.
Yeah, but she also, they made her sound very codependent. She seemed codependent, like she couldn't do
very codependent, exactly. And I'm just like, but I just don't know why they presented it her way, where it's like they made her effectively useless.
Yeah, it did. It actually made her very, very, very ineffective and weird. And so I was just like, okay, this is weird. So that was that. So then we also are introduced to more characters as well. But so we have the deputy. So he's like I don't know why he is the deputy, because that wasn't his major in school. I think he was I want to say he was something like an architect. I can't remember what his actual job, what he went to college for. He was leaving for college and going on a road trip.
Yeah.
And I think he was with his mother and his father. So they were either taking him home from college or they were going on a trip together. The father has dementia. And the mother is basically running the cafe. And then his name is Kenny Liu. He is the deputy to Sheriff Stevens. Very cool character. He is in a storyline that I find interesting, only as somebody who identifies as pansexual, bisexual, what you want to call him. It's somebody that goes both ways, basically. Doesn't care about gender. He has a crush on she's technically a doctor. She's a resident doctor. Like, she was in her residency. And she was also working as an ENT, which a lot of people do to put themselves through medical school and other places. You don't make a lot of money as a medical student, or any, should I say. And so she was, I guess, responding to something in an ambulance. And of course they get stuck. And I'm assuming the person with her ends up dying. I can't be sure if the woman that was with his father was actually the other person in the ambulance or not, because they were introduced to a character that was kind of at her clinic. They make a makeshift clinic for the character's name is Christy. Christy has her own little clinic, and there was a woman there that was taking care of Kenny's dad, who has dementia, and they were playing chess, and something ends up happening. And I know it wasn't something happening. There's a crazy character that's being talked to that was basically told to leave the clinic door open and, take the talisman and throw it on the ground or break it or whatever. And the creatures were able to come in. And it was such a messed up scene because they were playing chess and the woman went upstairs to get something and she just sees them standing in the door smiling. And so she runs downstairs and she closes the door and she locks him in to like this boiler room situation. And then of course she gets ripped apart, and then they rip apart the dad that has dementia. And it is so effing messed up. It's literally, there are moments like this in this series that just, you're just like,
it's a dramatic moment, especially where Kenny actually is like, he's in such shock. He's even cupping his dad's body and just smearing it all over him. And
yep. All the blood, he's just holding, hugging his dad. He can't handle it. And like him and his dad used to play chess. And so he starts carving out this chess, like pieces in the board for, that's something he used to do with his dad. It is a mess. It actually throws Kenny into like this state where he can't function very well. Which is bad because you can't break down in this type of situation where you are. So it's
but let's be honest too. How long was a guy with dementia going to last in this situation anyway?
True, that's true. Because eventually you probably would have done something to open the door as well. But I mean, it's just really, really sad. But so back to Kenny though, they did have a storyline that kind of irks me, and I just got to put it out there. Okay, it irks me personally because I hate when they write things this way. So Christy has a fiance who's a woman. Now, I'm assuming Christy is bisexual because she's also attracted to Kenny, but Kenny's acting on it a lot more than Christy is. Like, they're friends, they share books, like they all have a book and they each one read a chapter and they talk about it. So they have their own makeshift book club, basically, because there's no TV. There's really nothing else to do there than go to the cafe and listen to the radio, I guess, in the cafe. So Kenny has a crush on Christy. Christy, again, is engaged to a woman. She has every intention of getting out of there and getting back to her fiance, even though she's scared. At this point, I think they've been there. I think she said it's been like 3 years since she was there. Throughout the entire series, Kenny has been like flirting with her and blah, blah, blah. Even though he knows he has a fiance, at one point he's like, when we get out of here, we can go travel together. And she's like, I have a fiance. And he's like, oh, and she's kind of letting him down, but then she goes back later and she's like, yeah, but I kind of like you, so I'm confused because I still want to be with the woman I fell in love with, but then I actually like you. And I'm like, that's such a it's something that just happens. And I know on the one hand I should feel completely okay with it because at least they're giving them a heterosexual storyline where it's like, if this had been a woman and two men, then and she's like, oh, I'm attracted to this guy, but I'm still in love with the guy back home. That tracks. But because there's no other LGBTQ plus representation but this one effing character, it's like, really? Like, really? Like, the guy is literally hitting.
Well, don't forget about Sheriff Boyd's son's girlfriend.
Well, I don't know what her sexual identity is because remember now. Well, it seems like she was making out with a woman, but that could be bi-curious.
Said we get together sometime and have fun.
she's have fun. That could be somebody who is bi-curious. That's not somebody who actually would have a relationship with another female. So there's a difference. That's why I don't know what she is. I have to put her over here on the
it's only 10 episodes, and we can still get more on our character
community
later, but
Now, what I'm saying is like in our community, because there's so much biphobia, that is actually a biphobia trope. So we don't like that storyline at all. Like you either are serious shit or get off the pot. That's literally what that is. So she's just somebody who's openly free sexually.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I look at it as more of stranded on a desert island situation for so many years and stuff, on one hand.
That would only track with me if she wasn't having sex with Steven's son. There's a difference between it's like being in prison and they're all guys and eventually they're like, the holes look good. No, that's a whole different concept.
Oh, no, Kevin.
No, she's in the house where they have orgies. That's the thing. Yeah. Her characters, I like her character, but that whole storyline bothers me. I don't talk about that. But but the whole thing with Christy, that is interesting. But something that I thought was also interesting is she kept talking about where she was from. Do you remember the city she said she was coming from? Because it's like, huh?
Wait, was she from Texas?
She said something, and I remember the city that she kept name dropping at the end of the show, the very last episode, because she was just telling Kenny she was confused and she didn't think she was ever going to see her fiance again. A bus from her city.
Oh yeah, the bus. Yeah, I remember that part. I just don't remember the name of the city off the top of my head.
That's what I was thinking. Oh, they're going there. They're literally going to have they're going to have a triangle.
They're going to have the fiance come.
The female fiance and the male deputy sheriff, who technically I guess right now is acting sheriff.
Triangle,
so it's a love triangle. So I see they're doing that there. So that is something I'm interested in. But again, like I am very sensitive only because I'm speaking on behalf of people that are like me. So like I can't say this from other people. But if you identify as bisexual or pansexual at all, I'm very sensitive to storylines where they make us this flaky, type person because it makes you feel like you can't have a real relationship because you're always going to be craving the other sex or you're always going to be running. It's always like you have to have your cake and eat it too. And it's such a biphobia thing. And it drives me absolutely insane. And it's something that they do in writing all of the time. You can't just be happy with a partner because just as you're attracted to the other sex. So it's just something that happens a lot. With Christy, I'm a little bit more lenient because, again, if I look at it through the gaze of a heterosexual relationship, this actually is progress in a way because they are giving her a storyline they would get to somebody if, it was a heterosexual thing. But in terms of the other character that we'll talk about in a minute, her just making out with a girl or having sex with a girl, that's by curiosity. She's not committing to crap, She is completely in love with the sheriff's son. She has not said, oh, I could be in a relationship with this person. That is just somebody who is like, I'm in love with you, but I am open to sleeping with everybody else. Orgy me. That's literally what I don't like that storyline. That's just really weird.
Oh, yeah, that storyline. No, definitely not.
Yeah, it's just very, very weird. But we are introduced to those characters. And then we have another character who actually I liked, but everybody thought was extremely annoying. And that is the character of Jade Herrera. He is a tech Mongol who sold his, I think he sold his business and was basically becoming a millionaire or a billionaire or whatever.
I'm pretty sure it was a billionaire. Yeah, he was definitely rich and he came out of that car strung out.
Yeah, he was strung out, which is so interesting because this adds to another element of the mystery. They've never had, here's my spouse, Grand Rapids. Thank you, baby. She was from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Grand Rapids. So, but we never had two cars come simultaneously. So we had two cars coming into this place and they actually collide and cause a wreck with each other. So like the Stevens family's RV gets knocked into, like literally they spin off and get knocked into the woods and it's upside down. And their poor son, Ethan, had a stick coming out of his leg, which was effing horrible. But it did lead us into another conclusion that you could stay out as long as you had a talisman with you. You could literally stay out anywhere.
All you need. So
you just need a talisman.
Great too.
Yeah, it did work. And so, which is interesting because they were experimenting because they had Christy come out on the scene and she couldn't move him. So she had to try and get the stick out of him and sew him up. So they had to stay overnight in the RV with a busted out window at the top and all that with just the amulet hanging in the RV, not knowing if it was going to work or not. And I thought that was an interesting thing. But I actually really enjoyed Jade because Jade is a very complex character. Yes, he is loud. Yes, he is egotistical. And yes, he is very much brilliant and thinks less of other people. But his interactions with Tina, who is Kenny's mother, you see a completely different side of him, because he sees Kenny's mother as a mother figure, and he has a soft spot for Kenny's mother. And Kenny's mother, who we thought didn't speak English but seems to understand Jade, like, she has a soft spot for him. And so I love the dynamic of that, because in some ways Jade acted more like Tina's or as her name is Tion, actually Tion's son, than Kenny's did at times. And then we actually learn a little bit about him in the series. Like, yes, he's like I said, he's pompous, he's all of these things, but he was also, living with his grandmother when his parents died, and she died, and they ended up getting, sent to live with an uncle. I'm assuming that was a very bad experience, and so he had a very messed up childhood. And so that's the way he's kind of detached from people.
Because I was gonna say, the way that it seemed to be framed between Jade and Kenny's mom is that, effectively, like, she's kind of recognizing that he may have had a lack of a mother figure in his life.
Yeah.
So, she's trying to be that for him, especially in a situation where it's like, she could probably help him deal with some of his own stuff that's going on stuff. Because I loved a lot of their dialogue, especially later in the show. And even beforehand, I like how she started getting under his skin, like, right away, where it's Kenny coming up, hey, dinner's ready, come downstairs. And he's like, I ain't coming downstairs to eat. And she just rolls in, is like screaming. And I'm like, oh, dang, man, you better go downstairs, bro.
Yeah, and he always listened too. Like, always. Like, okay, I'm gonna come downstairs.
He's like, dude, the minute she raised her voice, he's like, yes, mother.
Yep. I love the relationship between her and Jade. I think if something happens to her, I think Jade would be probably more affected than her own son would be, because he's adopted. He adopted her as his mother. I mean, when she was praying over her husband, like, she had a shrine in the house. She said, pray with me, and he got down and prayed. He doesn't know, I'm not sure if they're speaking Cantonese or Mandarin, but he does not know her language at all. But he literally got on his knees and was praying with her. And that's what I love. And people don't see that, because, yes, again, he comes out very abrasive to everybody else. Now, to Jim, though, to Jim Matthews, I'm completely okay with that, because I always thought Jim was a bit of a dick. He acted very dickish a lot in this series. And I understand wanting to protect your family, but he just took it to another level that just made me at times just want to take him and just smack shit out of him most of the time. So I did not like Jim's character. I know.
Yeah, with Jim, it definitely very much feels like he doesn't like it when his personal space is violated.
Yeah. Or when you question him about anything, which is interesting. And I am looking at the comment section, guys. I promise I will get to those in a second. And but no, I what I really dislike the most about him is that he's an engineer and he builds amusement parks. That does not mean he's smarter than everybody else there. So he's trying to figure out how they can get a signal to the outside world. And so he's like, we should be able to do this. And it's actually Jade who comes in and says, why are you people just sitting around accepting this shit? Why aren't we trying to contact people for help us, And so he concocts all the ideas. We should do this. We should do that. There's another mystery about the electricity in this town. All of the electricity, the lamps, anything that runs on electricity in general, there are no wires. There's nothing that it's connected to. So nothing's plugged into the wall, but the electricity
they split open the cords, and it's effectively all the cords are just for show.
Yep, they're all for show. So they were trying to figure out, okay, what is this mystery? We still don't really know. But Jade was like, but you know what? If I plug this hairdryer from this car into the lamp, it works. So if we get a bunch of this, wire and strip it down, and then we just link them all together through the power sources like the lamps and stuff, we can get enough juice to power a signal out from the radio tower that they're building, which is essentially giving people hope. So they're all putting their money and banking their money on the fact that that's going to get them out of town. And they do build this radio tower. And of course, one of the mysteries of this town happens, and a storm rolls in. And of course, the storm rolled in. I'm gonna tell you, Joe, when I watched this, you know what I was thinking about? Remember the remake of Cabin in the Woods, when they were basically orchestrating all that? I was like, are they doing this because of Cabin in the Woods?
Well, that was actually one of my thought process was, are they in some kind of biodome
Yeah.
where, the environment's being controlled? Because you watch the entire series from start to finish. Can you name me one other time where there was a cloudy sky,
Nope.
rain, any of that? You
Nope.
can't. You
Yeah.
absolutely can't. It was just there at the very end when they were trying to get a signal out because, possibly whoever is controlling the whole scenario is like, we can't let that happen. So quick. Yeah.
Yep.
throw,
And then,
throw, throw in a
so a
storm
storm
and
rolls
then
in. Yep.
they actually get a hold of somebody still. And it's like,
But now they
you
get a hold of
shouldn't do that,
someone,
Jim.
but this is what's weird. So Jim's wife was so like, I'm going to figure out where the electricity's coming from. Because I get it. She needed something to do. She's still grieving over her baby. She's pissed that they're stuck there. All this stuff is happening. So she starts digging a hole in the basement, and everybody in the family is digging a hole in the damn basement. So she, for some god-awful reason, decided to go back to the house while everybody's waiting to try out to test out the radio. She's like, I'm going to go back to the house and keep digging my hole. And so she's down there.
Plan B. She called it Plan B.
Plan B. Yeah, I guess she's digging to Australia or China, I guess. I don't know. But she's in there digging to try and figure out how deep it goes and what she's going to find, which again, she has no idea what's down there. For all she knows, she could be digging into the graves of where the things sleep, which actually is what is said.
Yeah,
but,
it's actually ended up doing. It's like, yeah, this is where they live.
Yeah, this is where the things that come out at night to kill us actually hibernate, like vampires. But so she's doing that, and then Jim actually gets a signal out, but the person says, "Hey, Jim, you guys are digging in. Your wife really shouldn't be doing that, basically." And so he's freaking out, and he runs home to Tabitha. But something has already happened, and like there's like kind of earthquake or whatever in the house, and so she gets trapped in the hole. She falls in the hole. And when she falls in the hole, then she's actually seen with another character that is very mysterious. And his name is Victor. And Victor was a child who was the very first person, besides probably his family, that was in this town. He was in there as a 10-year-old or 9-year-old boy. He has been in there a long time. He's got to be in his like late 30s, early 40s now. Maybe even later.
I gotta say, he might even be up in his early 50s potentially.
Yeah,
he's an older chap.
He is definitely an older character, but he's a character that has been there the longest, has seen the most things. There is a little mysterious boy in all white that keeps helping him, and eventually starts Ethan, the Matthew's youngest boy, starts seeing him too. And he starts directing them on where to go, kind of saving them. I don't know what that's about. I don't know what this character is supposed to simulate or symbolize. And then now I'm like, are we in a VR simulation? And this is like an NPC? I mean, what is happening right now?
Heck, the kid even appears before the girl at the very end too to help her and Sheriff Boyd out.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's always in a point of helping them and not helping them. And then there are these dogs we keep seeing too that come out of nowhere. It's just very interesting. But like Victor actually is in the hole, and he's like, he told me that you would be here, and I just needed to wait. And the reason that the Victor character was here is we're going back to the whole thing with Colony House. Now, Colony House, again, there are two different types of the town. There are the townspeople, and then there's Colony House. Colony House is basically run by a woman named Donna. Her and her sister were out hunting, and they got attacked, and her sister ended up dying, and she ended up getting saved. And she's one of the ones that was there before even Boyd showed up. And so it was her and the father, I believe, and a few others that were there. And she decided once the talismans were proven to be effective, instead of hiding underground and all like huddling together, they divided. So they had everybody at this big type of old mansion called Colony House, and then other people in the smaller kind of rundown houses that people just took. And the Matthews ended up taking the house that Megan and her mother died in, which was still very effing bad or crazy for me. Another side note, just going to tell you from Maria's brain.
But I'm going to say this too. The Matthews made the best call where they're like, we're going to keep our kids in the same room with us.
True. That was but to be fair though, they still are kind of stupid because Ethan got away from them a couple of times. And really, if that boy in white,
I was a little off on, where it's just like, why are you taking your eyes off your youngest kid who probably can't rationalize the situation the same way you do?
And I'm hoping they nailed the windows down, because if they didn't, then Ethan could go to the window and be like, oh, look, it's Victor. One of them could make himself look like Victor, and then he opens the door and then they're all dead. So, I mean, it's smart, but it's also dumb in a way. But again, like, I will agree that the colony house was a good idea in theory, because in the colony house, everybody was free. They were very weird because they would have sex with kids in the room. Like when Matthews were first staying there their first night, there were two people getting it on the couch, and the little boy was literally fast asleep with his parents, like right on the ground, in the same room. But I mean, they're just open and free. It's basically Woodstock 24/7 in the colony house.
I was gonna say, I imagine there's the occasional orgy there.
Yeah. And when you first get there, you're basically giving a choice, but you cannot go back on your choice once you make it. All decisions are final. So if you decide to be in the colony house, you are a colony house resident. If you decide to be a townsy, you are a townsy. That's it. And so, of course, when the Matthews go, the daughter was in her feelings about how her parents were being and blah, blah, blah. So she decides to go live in the colony house after the parents decided to be Townsies and live in the house. And they decided to live in the mother and Megan's house, which was so weird for me, Joe, because when they first got there, they saw the blood and everything. So they had to go clean that up. They had to go clean up the bloody room that they were going to sleep in. They had the little girl dead and the mother dead and all that. That to me was just crazy. You know, if I walked in there and saw that, my first inclination would not be, hey, I think I'm going to live in that house, the death house. That's not something I would have done.
I mean, I was under the impression there were no more houses available, because even Jade had to be put up with Kenny. So it's like, I think that was their only option.
Well, that or stay in the colony house. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where they were sleeping originally. But again, it was a good thing they didn't do that per se, because of what happened. So in the colony house with Donna, they have these little celebrations, and the character that I was talking about is named Fatima. Fatima is the one who's kind of like free with love. You know, she slept with this woman, makes out with this woman, but she's actually in love with Ellis, who is Sheriff Stevens' son. So Fatima, it's her 1 year celebration for surviving, or basically not dying, in this place. So every year they have a celebration.
Yeah, it's like, here's the fact that you're not dead celebration.
Yep. Party.
Right.
And so I was thinking when they were having that party, this is a bad idea, because they had alcohol at this party. And I think they make it out of potato wine. The bartender makes it out of potato wine.
Potatoes, yeah.
Yeah. So they were getting drunk, basically. And this is a big party. Everybody's at this party. Well, we learned that there's some random guy that's been talking to a girl for weeks, months, whatever. She's been courting him through the window. And she keeps saying, why aren't you going to let me in? Are you going to let me in? When are you going to let me in? And he's always leaving flowers for her outside during the day that she gets at night, so he can go to the bathroom window and talk to her. The fact that this was going on in this house this entire time, and nobody ever came to the bathroom and never ever caught this, is interesting, because there are a lot of people in this house. But because they have to have an incident, because we had to have disruption in the system, he opens the window, and she comes through the window, and he closes the window behind her, and she's making out with him, and then she starts biting his lip off, and she basically rips him apart. And then she cleans herself up in the mirror, which I thought was very human-like. She straightened herself up, and then she opens the window and lets others in, and then they start going after the people in the colony house. A lot of people escaped and became refugees, which is such an interesting thing to say. They became refugees in their own little town that they, have been in all this time with other people. But because they're in colony house, they're actually considered foreigners. So it's just very weird. But a lot of people escaped. Some people did not escape. Victor was in the attic with the Stevens daughter, because she kissed Fatima, or wanted to kiss Fatima. She didn't kiss her. She saw her kissing the woman, and she has a thing for her. So we know, I guess the daughter's sexuality is in question. And, Fatima was like, oh, now it's almost like she was like, I don't really swing that way. That's literally what's interesting about her. I have a boyfriend, which is funny because you literally just kissed this woman. And so, of course, the girl's in her feelings. She goes up to Victor's room, which again is ironic because Victor has been creeping her out this entire time. And that's the one room she went to, which is interesting writing point, and from a writing standpoint, to go hide in the room with him for plot purposes, because he knew something was going to go down. And the reason he knew something was going to go down is either the boy gave him a vision or the place gave him a vision. And so he starts drawing. He draws a lot of pictures with crowns because, again, he's a little boy. He was a little boy when he got there. So he still has that mentality. And he drew all of these graves, and he went and dug all of these graves up prior to this happening, saying, you're pretty much all going to die, which was very interesting. And then so when everything happened, they're in his room, which is kind of like in the attic. And so he gets a rope and puts it out the window, and he's like, we got to climb out, And I was thinking, that's smart and stupid in a way, because what if they were just down there? Others were just down there staring at them like that. You know what I mean? But they didn't. For plot purposes, they weren't out there. But when they get down, they see the boy in white, and she wants to make a run, I guess, for her parents' house, and she's like, "No, we need to go in the woods." She's like, "No." He's like, "Bitch, we need to go in the woods." So they go in the woods. And then they find these things called, they're basically, we learned in this season, there's things called anywhere trees. I think it's called an anywhere tree. Basically, if you go into it, you can go anywhere, but you don't know where you're going to end up. And so he puts her in the anywhere tree, and she ends up in like this little mine across town, which again is interesting because it was the middle of the night, and I guess she stayed there all night. But was there an amulet in that mine? That's something I really was curious about.
Yeah, I don't think there was. It was just, she was well hidden.
Which is interesting. So she had to stay there all night, which would have freaked me the fuck out. But she was there all night, and then in the morning she went home.
Better than the deal Sheriff Boyd ended up with at the end of the season. I'm just saying.
Yeah, that's true. And then what's also interesting is the fact that when Victor would follow, or anybody that follows you through this anywhere tree, they don't end up the same place as you. So you go through the tree, you could be on the other side of town. They go through the tree, they could literally be in the middle of all the creatures. I mean, you have no idea where the hell they're going to end up. So it's very interesting. Victor apparently ended up in under their house in that little crawl space, waiting for them to dig him out, which is very creepy. And I don't know why he wasn't dehydrated or dead. So I'm confused about that. But that's a whole other thing. But yeah, so we learned about the anywhere tree. So, but essentially, Colony House is screwed. Fatima managed to save Sheriff Stevens' son because she had an amulet. So she closed the door. She went back for him. She closed the door. She closed the inner door, put the amulet on the door, and they weren't able to get to her. So that one space, it was basically that one room, because the amulet was still intact, hanging up, and she was touching it. They were like, it was almost, they were like, oh shit, we can't go get you. So that essentially saved their lives to morning. So the amulets are very effective, but again, it goes back to my indigenous side, because that's such a thing you would see in Native culture, like these wards against these evil spirits. But then on the flip side, they're also used to control these spirits. And that's really what I think they were there for. They were there to basically seek these guard dogs on people that were taking the land and that hurt the tribe. So I don't know why, but I just feel like that's what that is. Okay, so Colony House is screwed. We have the refugees that are now having to bunk in the town, and they already have limited space. It's causing issues with the people in the town. They're all of their belongings and stuff were all hoarded together in the cafe, guarded by Tion. She runs the cafe. And she was holding all the residents, all the people off with a broom, because they're all coming for her, and she's holding them off with a broom. And of course, the sheriff is like, "What the hell are you doing? You guys are like freaking out. Take your ass home, baby." I love it. That's literally it. He's like, "Take your ass home." But they were trying to overpower this woman to get their stuff because they didn't want to share it with the Colony House. So that was a thing. Something that happened though, and I remember talking to you about this, Joe, when they happened. I remember we were in Marco Polo, and I'm like, where did this character come from? So Christy had a friend.
Oh yeah, this guy.
And I think his name was Eric. And apparently he was one of the first people that helped Christy when she first got there. And apparently he was just a really nice guy that people liked at the Colony House. And
everybody liked Eric during that.
We have never seen Eric until this damn point. He ends up going in to stay, and I want to say he stayed at the sheriff's place or one of the places, I think, overnight at one point. And he's going in, and they're all like bunkering down. And then apparently somewhere in the night, he kills himself. He hangs himself basically because he can't take it. And everyone's talking about Eric, and it really affected Donna and affected everybody. And I just remember telling Joe, "Who the fuck is Eric? Where did Eric come from?" It would have made sense.
It effectively was a red shirt from Star Trek situation where it's just kind of like, you get a new red shirt every episode, they die, and then it's the rest of the episodes just, we must reflect on what this red shirt meant to us and all the conversations and stuff that we never got to witness or experience.
We never
But-
even saw him with anybody. Like, where did you come
But
from?
we just remember how much we love him. Like, even it got Kevin going up to the thing saying, hey, I need some help. I think, I remembered Eric, he might have a little free time, right? And then Thomas is like, yeah, he did. He did. Kevin just,
Like, the irony of them actually
he was my
asking
best
for Eric.
friend.
Out of all the people, do you think Eric can help us? I'm like, who? It would have made more sense for me if we had saw Eric from the beginning hanging out with Christy or Kenny
He's
or
been an actual
somebody.
character,
Yeah,
That's
not just this random ass guy. It's like, oh, Eric's dead.
It was definitely surreal to a degree to just be like, wait, so we're supposed to care about this guy now? What?
Like, seriously.
Like, is there
really
some
dumb.
kind of is there a lost 11th episode titled Eric?
I just don't. I mean, it's obviously a lost episode. I will say, I think you said this too. Everybody who knows that the Russo brothers are involved in this, if these people are actually dead already, I'm gonna be pissed.
Oh yeah, no, you already got me on it with Lost. I'm like, don't you dare pull
do
it.
that.
The minute the wife wrote it on the wall, it's like, don't you
Yep, because they had a theory wall. And she wrote,
God.
did we survive the RV crash? ? Are we really dead? And I'm like, you better not be. You better effing not be. You better be alive.
Time since Lost went off there, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, so I will be in my
went down history also as one of the worst finales of all time.
Yeah, all that build up just for them to be dead, that was pretty bad, actually. All right, so now we're going to come down to the extremely cray-cray of the episode. And that is the character of Sarah Myers. Not to be mistaken with Mike Myers. She is cuckoo. So she was in the town with her brother. Her brother was a farmer in the town. He had goats. He was growing crop and all this stuff. He has chickens. They found the animals basically in the woods when Sheriff Stevens got there. He just randomly found these animals in the woods, which is another reason we think it could be a biodome situation, is like they're putting things in play for them to survive. So that could be a thing. But so Sarah is being communicated with by voices that are telling her to kill people. And if she kills them, then they will get to go home. Now, Sarah already has to be unstable to begin with, because she did say her brother saved her from a very bad situation, which I actually think he broke her out of an asylum. I really do. I don't know why. I just feel like that's what that is.
Yeah, no, there's definitely to a degree where when the character was first introduced and then the whole thing with like the voices coming up and stuff, I was like, is she schizophrenic? I feel like she's schizophrenic.
But what's interesting is that, so it tells her to do two very bad things. So the first thing she does is, Jade had a friend that he's known forever, who was also, I don't know if it was his manager or his business partner or something, but definitely a friend. And he gets injured in the crash, so he gets taken to the clinic. And I'm very glad that Jade was taken to Colony House, because Sarah comes in there and she stabs him in the neck and kills him, because the voices told her to. And then that's when she leaves the door open.
I got it. We got to backtrack there. No, she kisses him first.
Yeah, she kisses him first. Yeah. And then she kills him. And then she leaves the clinic door open, which basically gets Kenny's father and the other woman killed. All based on what the voices told her to do.
They told me to do it.
They told me to do it. And she literally is in pain. Like, she gives the voices where it's in pain. She has seizures from it. Well, when the Matthews come to town after this, they tell her to kill. She's actually in the cafe because she works in the cafe for Tion. She's a waitress. And she looks over at the Matthews and she's talking, and the voice tells her to kill Ethan, the little boy. Mm-hmm. And so she doesn't want to do it. She even talks to Christy and she's like, no, if you thought you had a chance of leaving town, but you have to do something really bad, would you do it? And Christy's like, pretty much, yeah, I guess it depends on the circumstance, but I guess, yeah, if it's just a small bad thing. So she's thinking a small bad thing, like stealing something or breaking something. She's not thinking murder, but Christy's like, okay, or Sarah's like, okay, so she becomes friends with Ethan. She goes to the house and she's like, hey, you want to see my farm? And so she wants to take Ethan to the farm, but the mother says, well, I'll go too. And she's like, well, I can take him. And the mother's like, no, I'll go. And I already knew what the mother was going to say that, because she lost a child already. She's not letting her child out of her sight. So
it would have been interesting if she did let the kid go by himself after getting that information too.
Yeah, so she
So it's like they
takes
couldn't
him.
do that. From a writing standpoint, they couldn't allow that to happen.
Yeah, that's bad parenting anyway. So you don't even know this girl. So she takes the them to the farm and she's showing them the animals, and then she says she's gonna show the mother something in the barn, and she ends up locking the mother in the barn in like this room, and then she's going to go try and kill Ethan. Well, what she didn't realize is at the same time, her brother, who actually knew that she killed this boy and was like covering it up, he felt so guilty. He went to the priest, Father Katari, and told him, Father Kotri, and tells him about it. And Father Kotri's like, wait, what? She's doing what? And so they're going to intervene. And so he's like, we got to go find her. So they go to the cafe. She's not there. So the brother figures out she's probably back at the farm. He gets there right when she's about to kill Ethan. And so she has like a knife or like a blade of some sort. And she's fighting, and she ends up cutting her brother's throat and killing him. And the father sees her, and she runs off, and it looks like she got away. But the father actually, the priest, he gets her and he ties her up and puts her in the bottom, in the basement area of his church, and he's holding her there because she told him about the voices she's hearing. So he thinks that it's actually really happening. Of course, he thinks maybe it's a sign from God. Maybe the gods are talking to her, or God's talking to her, sending her signs or something to free them, and that they're all being tested, because he's really religious. We also learned that Father Kotri actually killed someone. And the reason he got to the town is because he was on the run. He had a young boy who was coming to church and was asked, basically, he had a feeling something was going on. He didn't know what it was. He felt maybe the parents were abandoning, are neglecting him. And one day the boy came to church and wanted to stay there. He didn't want to go home. And he, the father was like, well, no, I've got mass. I got all this stuff to do. So you need to go back to your house. And he does. And he felt really guilty about it. So he went to the house to check on him. And when he got there, he saw that the father had beaten the boy to death. And he snapped. He absolutely snapped. And the way they describe the scene is crazy because he gave him a candy bar. And he's like, just take this candy bar, like a little treat, and go home. He always kept candy bars for all the kids in the neighborhood. And he saw that candy bar, and he picks up the candy bar, and he just essentially beats the father to death. And he takes the candy bar and he goes on the run. And then he's about to kill himself. He got on the bridge to kill himself. And this is what's so ironic, because everybody that got to this town to this point, they drove there, they saw the tree, they saw the crows, and nothing told them to go there. But something told him to go there. It says, no, don't die. We have, you have another calling. And so he starts driving, and then he ends up at the town. And so he's one of the ones that was brought there differently, which is another mystery. What brought him there? Unfortunately, it didn't end up saving him because, after the whole colony, house, situation, they were all going into the sheriff's place, and one of the creatures come up to him and just like cut him, slice him up, and he ended up bleeding out, which is a thing. So he's dead. But that whole thing is a mystery. But so Sarah Myers, who right before he died, Father Kotri told him about Sarah. And of course, Sheriff Stevens is not happy about it. But he ends up listening to him, taking Sarah. And that's when they go on. They're like going to go see out what else is out there in the woods. And so they go on this little mini adventure in the woods, which is, again, very interesting. It's very, very interesting. But long story short, they run into the something else happening where something is moving their tent. Me and Joe think it's the trees because Victor's character early on tells Ethan that the trees have moved. So the trees are essentially alive in this world. And so they get moved a lot. The amulet gets knocked down, or totem gets knocked down. He puts it back up. In the morning they get up and they're in a huge elaborate spider web. And the spider web is like filled with these crazy spiders. Sheriff Stevens starts hearing a woman call for help. He sees a vision of his wife in a web, and he goes to reach for her. And of course, it's not her. Like, it actually looks like one of the creatures, shifts in her face and is like reaching out to him. And then he gets like all these spiders on him, and one of them bites him. And so he's poisoned by this spider. So he's not doing well. And then on top of that, they keep hearing this noise, and the noise actually turns out to be a lighthouse. And we're actually left with that. Like, we're left with them looking at this lighthouse and trying to get to this lighthouse. We don't know who the hell is in the lighthouse. More than likely, it's the same voice that was talking to Jim through the radio, but it's very ominous and it's very strange. And like the entire series is just completely crazy. It's completely crazy. And I'm in love with it. So that's kind of like some of the summary of it. So we're going to really briefly talk about what we think is going on. I know we already talked about biodome. I definitely think there's a lot of indigenous, pretty much indigenous influence on this. I think a lot of this is Native American lore. I really do, especially down to if you really look at the talismans, it even looks like Lakota language on it to me. So I really think that there's something going on where coloners came. And you always see people throughout time. There's a tree with all these bottles that have different years in them. And so there's something ominous about that too. This show is constructed very well, which is why if it turns out they're all dead, I'm telling you, I don't know, I'm gonna have to throw them out the window because they have set this up in a way that is very, very good and very mysterious and very engaging. And I will be in my feelings. Number one, I'll be in my feelings if it doesn't get a season 2 on Epix because I'm already invested. And number 2, if it turns out that they were dead the entire time, I swear to God, guys, you will not like our review. You will not like the review for that. Okay, so let's just talk really briefly about what we think is happening, and then we'll just take it from that point and then answer some of the questions I've been seeing and comments in the chat.
Yeah.
So I told you that I think they're skinwalkers. I think that's what the creatures are. I think that the land got taken, and I think the tribe got probably wiped out and they were cursed. And those totems don't just keep and repel these creatures. They also, I think if they actually understood the totems better, they probably could control these. I feel like these creatures actually, because when you look at the creatures, the way they act, like especially the girl that broke in the colony house, she even said, he said, I don't like, what's happening here. And she's like, well, I don't really like what I am either. And I think when she said she didn't like what she was, or, what she's become, legit. Yeah, it made me feel like she was human at one time. And maybe she turned into that. And so when she was looking in the mirror, that was basically her looking at her old self, fixing herself up. If you're a creature and you have these like alien-like teeth that come out and you look like creepy and vampire-ish and all this and hideous, why are you taking time to look in the mirror and take on and fix your made-up appearance, I guess is what I'm saying. So I kind of feel like every one of those creatures were at one point human. And that they committed a crime or they did something against the land or the people there and they were cursed. So I think they're all cursed people, which actually could still be in line with skinwalkers if you really look at the lore, and that those totems are actually something that not only repels them, but controls them. So whoever owns these totems probably could use them like a damn, attack dog if they really thought about it. But they're not as familiar. Like the sheriff found these things randomly. He doesn't even know what they mean. He doesn't even know why they work. So that is a thing. So, but yeah, I think that there was a lot to that. I think that those things were cursed. These are cursed people, and they are just doing what the curse makes them do. And that is kill the fresh meat that comes there. Everybody that comes to the land needs to die. And so I feel like this is all about taking land. It's all about colonization. Colonization's bad. So that's what we've learned on this. Now, the other elements with the spiders and the lighthouse, yeah, it's interesting because there's definitely something supernatural at play, but then is it? Because if we're going also by what you think, Joe, and it's a biodome, this stuff could have happened, and then the military could be like, what the hell is this? And they quarantined it, and they're watching it from a safe location,
right? Especially since you have a situation where the trees are apparently moving and the forest is moving. But that's definitely one thing they point out in the show several times is that these people came from several different areas, but they all drove on that same strip of road at one point. They all came across that one tree, that tree trunk in the middle of the road, and so then it's kind of like, it does make sense that it's, a moving forest and whatnot. And if that's the case with this plot of land, the military through satellites and everything at some point is going to look down and go, the fuck is that going on down there? Probably send some people in with like, I don't know, better radio equipment or whatever. And they kind of get a fix for what's going on. And they're like, okay, we definitely need to quarantine this in some way. We maybe can't stop people from entering the town per se because it's always moving. But what we can do is maybe mitigate it in some fashion, because it's like we could supply them with power. Maybe that'll give them a little bit of an edge, and release some goats in the forest and some cows and animals for them to find, because apparently the creatures, you call them skinwalkers. I'm going potentially with wendigos because they're kind of similar in terms
Still
of,
native, so it's
yeah,
fine. They still have
it's
native
still very much
connection.
in terms of their history. There's definitely some
Yeah.
overlap. And it's kind of like, for some reason they don't seem to attack the animals and stuff, because I didn't see or hear anything about them needing to put a talisman up in the barn to keep the animals safe and stuff like that. So
Nope.
they seem to be clearly going after people specifically. So yeah, it could be a thing of, from the outside source, the whole biodome perspective, where they're just like, you know, giving them all of these different as much advantage as possible to live until maybe they can figure a way to get them out of the town or so. um and in the meantime, they wanted to obviously disrupt any attempts the townspeople might have for getting out, in the in the event that they're worried, of course, about drawing more people in, because you send out a radio signal and it's like, yeah, we're stuck in this town, we can't get out, blah blah blah. Sometimes it's here, sometimes it's there, we're not really sure how it works. But then maybe the person on the other end could be listening, and then it's like, more people start coming in.
Yeah.
uh and then it ends up being a bloodbath, because obviously there's only so much resources to go around, so much housing, and all that stuff. So in the end, it's like, what could the radio equipment do? Because I definitely have some ideas and stuff about, or not so much ideas, but like, questions about how would certain things work. Like, what would happen if they sent a helicopter into the middle of town, pick some people up, and just drove straight up in the air.
Or
How does
would it be like WandaVision and they try and send it through and it just like either becomes part of the town or disappears completely?
Yeah, I mean, if
Yeah.
the government, say, domed it off or something like that, yeah, of course, nothing would get through. But I do ask those kinds of questions. So what happened if it wasn't domed, for example,
Yeah.
and you send a helicopter down, picks people up, and goes straight up? How would that work? Like, would you be able to only drive so far? Would it just look like you're always just going, straight passing over the town too? Or is there a certain radius where maybe you could get high enough and you're out of and you're out of the vicinity, and you could just fly away? We don't know things like that. I ask questions like, what happens if a person who comes across the tree trunk just maybe has one of these really heavy duty, uh 4x4 trucks or whatever, and they got the means to be able to move it. The guy maybe is the equipment like a chainsaw, and then he's got the chains, and he can just drag it out of the road. And he drives through. Does he end up in the town at that point too, or does he
Does the
get to go
tree
on
end
the
up
next
right back
way?
there?
Exactly. Does
Really
the tree
messed up.
reform? We don't know. So there's definitely certain aspects about it that I'm asking tons of questions. That's one of the things I love about the show the most. Is much like Lost in the beginning, it's making me ask tons and tons and tons of questions. I'm a little worried about some of the answers to these questions. Like, I mean, I could just like I just told myself, man, imagine the disappointment of learning that, oh yeah, the cords and stuff don't work, and then you just find out the lights just have some kind of like new specialized ion battery embedded somewhere deep in it, and it's just like that's it, that's the solution. It's just some super advanced military battery or something like that. I'd be
I
like,
will
man,
be very in my feelings too if that's what that is.
I would be like that would be very kind of
That would be a
disappointing and stuff
cheap
like
way to
that.
get out of that. This is a cheap,
See, and
plot
that's the
line.
thing too. You get shows like this which make you ask all these very interesting questions, and it's almost like, is the answer going to be able to meet those expectations with shows like this? Like when we got to
Yeah.
the end of Lost, and it was like, yeah, they were just dead the whole time, and I'm like, that just seemed like such a fucking cop out.
Yep. That is a
And
cop, and that's what I'm saying. And maybe because everybody was upset about that, they will not do it in this one. That's what I'm thinking, Russo brothers. You will not do it in this one because you already know that we will come for you. So
yeah, and it's possible they had the wife ask that question. It's just sort of a way to like kind of maybe poke fun at that too. It's kind of like, we're not going to do it, but we're just going to throw it up there, just make you go like, you know,
Yeah,
kind of
and
that
something
moment
else
right
that I'm
there.
really hoping is that they aren't all victims of, like, an accident or different happened and they're all in a coma and it's, like, shared hysteria or, that
Yeah,
that would be really weird.
but there's also other questions that the show's posing, like, are these are they essentially victims of circumstance, or is it some kind of pre-selection process? Because one thing that we do find out is that the wife, she goes in the diner and she finds a bracelet that was lost. It was thought
That's
lost,
right.
and it was a bracelet that she made for her husband, and they lost it, but
Out of
somehow it
out of
ended up.
his father's shoestrings.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah,
just kind of like, and she recognizes it. She's like, "That's the exact one." And at first, dude's questioning it too. He's like, "Oh, yeah, so it looks like the same one." And then she points out the flaw in the design, and she's like, "That's something that only I could have done." And so then that starts to theorize a bunch of other questions too. Of, you know, was it some kind of like pre-selection process? They were like, is it a thing where they were always going to end up in the town at some point? They were just waiting for, maybe the town was waiting for them, to have kids and stuff like that, waiting for this disaster to happen or something
which could
that's
be,
gonna
yeah,
call them
that's
to the
that's an
town.
interesting point.
Uh, huh?
Yeah, and then you just made an interesting point. What if it's not just them? What if they're descendants of the people that
Yeah,
did something to that town, and now so, like, it's literally bringing all of their family there too to get rid of them too,
yeah,
which
exactly. It's
yeah.
sort of like some kind of revenge process and stuff like that. Where I was just kind of like wondering that, like,
Huh.
because obviously after stuff starts to happen and creatures coming out and stuff like that, of course people are just gonna pick up the town and be like, all right, deuces, we're getting out of here. Or maybe it was just beforehand too, because the creatures seemingly didn't come out until after Victor was a kid. And
Well, you know what? You just made another point, though. Have you noticed that mostly everyone? Now, I don't know if Stevens before he had to shoot his wife counts. Maybe something happened prior to that that traumatized him. We don't know, but you notice
well,
that
I
a
mean,
lot of them, like
I
Jade,
think that kind of points to even just the fact that they said he was in the military and stuff like that. Probably saw combat and
yeah, he
stuff.
probably
So
had a lot of combat or
it's
probably
probably, yeah,
PTSD.
he probably witnessed the horrific of something horrific
So then it makes
from
you
that
wonder if
itself.
all of them have that in common. Because think about it, the Stevens
Mhm.
lost their baby, right?
Yep.
And then we had who was it that said they lost someone? There was somebody else that said they lost someone. Of course, we know Jade lost his grandmother
Yeah, we had Dave lose his
and his
family and stuff.
parents.
So
But it seemed
mhm.
like all of them seem to have something where they lost something or someone in their lives prior. Like
There was
all of them.
generally, yeah, every person that came into town there was followed up with some kind of traumatic experience and
Yeah,
stuff, which
everything goes trauma. Yeah. Even
yeah,
the
which
priest
again makes
having to
me
kill that
wonder,
man. Yeah.
about the brother and sister pair. If she too was locked up, like you said, maybe she was locked up in an asylum and the brother broke her out and they were on the
Yep.
run. Who knows?
Or she was locked up in her house by her parent and abused. We mean, they made it seem like whatever it was really bad.
Yeah, it
And
was pretty
unfortunately,
bad.
the brother's not,
It,
and made the brother very protective over her too. And so
mhm.
something happened to her. And
Though,
so
though
yeah,
I will say, though I will say, at first I was getting some like strange vibes going on
yeah,
there.
yeah,
If you know what I mean, it's
yeah.
like,
And even Fatima, remember, she starts talking about the fact that the soldiers back in the country she was born in came and dragged her father out and
oh yeah,
assassinated
she was
him,
from
and they were
Iraq
hiding inside. Yeah,
originally, so yeah, she witnessed like her whole family like get slaughtered and
yeah,
stuff.
literally get
So.
slaughtered. Yeah. So I mean, all of them seem to have PTSD or traumatic events. So it's
Mhm.
interesting. So selection process could be anything from
I
finding
got
people
it.
that
The
have
town is
that to
Silent Hill.
descendants. Huh?
The town is Silent Hill. There you go.
I mean, you know what? It could be actually. You never
I
know.
mean, there's definitely a lot of overlap. I noticed after the show dropped and stuff. What was it in the Silent Hill community? The show's starting to pick up steam in the community and getting talked about.
Yeah.
So
I mean, like I guess it could be something loosely inspired, but yeah, I'm here for it. Let's roll through the comments really quickly because I know we're over our hour. I'm still watching the show, but didn't know you were watching it too, Maria. It's good. It is very good. I
oh,
actually want season 2 to premiere
uh,
right.
ag- again, I'm still like I said something the other stream. I'll say it again. At least so far, my favorite show of 2022.
Yeah, I will say Upload is probably on that list too because I know we both like Upload and we have a
Oh,
video
Blood is
coming out. But
so
Upload's such a
good.
good show.
I might put that as my number 2, to be honest.
Yeah,
I'd be comfortable
I
with
will
that.
say this. I definitely like this more than Upload, but I have to put it on there because
Yeah,
Upload is just crazy.
Upload is
Okay,
great.
explain to me why they can't get out. Like, if I'm going on the road and I see a tree blocking my way, I'm turning back. Does the town just make people stupid or what? Well, at this point, I don't even
There's
think they
a
could
few
back up.
things to that. I mean, because the Matthews family did try to turn around,
Yeah, they
and they
tried to go
still
back
ended
in
up
their
in the
RV.
town.
Yeah,
And as far as the town making people stupid, I mean, the town apparently does get into the person's head. And I think, Maria and we even talked about this, where the whole
yeah.
Skinwalker Wendigo concepts too is that, illusion is part of their repertoire in terms of power.
Yep,
It's like,
manipulation, they make you question yourself, and so
yeah,
it's definitely
not
a
just
thing.
manipulation, like, not just the fact that the trees are moving, but exactly illusion aspects where you're manipulating what you're seeing. So, while they think they're seeing and going down, the same strip of road the whole time, and coming back to the town. In fact, they could just be on the road in normal and just passing all of the turns that would get them off.
Well, then there's two things too that we didn't mention really quickly. There, when the person first gets to the town, they let them drive around for a little while. Then they put spikes on the road and they bust your tires. So when you go to the town, you see all these cars with their tires busted out, which looks really ominous and scary. You're thinking, well, are these people cannibals? But actually, they're doing it to save your life, so they can get you and be like, I know we sound cray cray, but the sun's going down and we need to get inside because if not, you gonna die. It's literally what's happening. And then in the cafe, there is a jukebox or little radio that plays a song that seems to be the theme of whatever the hell's happening at the time. It just plays these random songs and they have no idea why, because there's no radio station and you're not putting a quarter in it. It's essentially a radio.
They're just like, it occasionally happens.
Yeah, they're like, yeah, it just happens sometimes, and it's usually a song that, if you listen to the lyrics, is appropriate to what's happening in the moment. So it's like, it's really weird. So yeah, but I do understand that they do seem stupid at times, and they do stupid things, honestly, at times. But I think in terms of the tree situation, I don't think it would have mattered. Even if they reversed completely out, they would have come right back to that damn tree and right back to the town. So yeah, it just got him. Once you're in, I guess. Fun fact, the guy who plays Jim Matthews played Pinocchio in Once Upon a Time, another show where once you dive in, you can't get out. Oh, I've seen Once Upon a Time, and I am a Merida and Mulan shipper. Just throwing it out there. I really wanted Merida and Mulan to be together. Just putting it out there. This show reminded me of a hybrid of two comics, Stillwater and Basilisk. I haven't read Basilisk, but I have heard of Stillwater, so that's interesting.
I haven't read either of those.
Hey Maria, just stopping by to support your project. Hi Josh, you're awesome. I think you mean Joe. I like that. I'm gonna start calling you Josh now. Hello, Ray. Oh my God, that baby death story is awful. As a parent, and Joe, who also has a toddler,
many times I have always, especially when my daughter was first born, I heard that story in the show, and I was just thinking back to when my daughter was a newborn, and I'm just like, no.
Well, my daughter actually, the doctor told I could put my daughter with huge pillows, and because she wasn't gonna roll. She was only like maybe a month or so old.
When the doctors say, "Oh, don't worry, they're not gonna roll," the doctors, they lying.
Yep, I went downstairs to get her bottle, and I heard a thump and came back, and she had fallen off the bed on her back. She was crying, but no sound was coming out of her mouth. So I rushed her to the emergency room, and luckily she was okay, because babies have soft spots in their head. It freaked me the hell out.
Oh,
so
yeah,
when I saw that, I was like in my feelings. This is where the bad writing comes in. Megan said before she opened the window, "You don't look like grandma. Just make the kids seem stupid." This is true. She did say, "You don't really look like my grandma. Let me open the window and get a closer look." No, my thing is, this is how I know this child was not taught discipline. I'm not saying you have to spank your kids, but if that had been my situation and my daughter Mai was at the window and I said, "Mai, that is not your grandma. You better not open that damn window," she would say, "Yes, ma'am," and sit her little ass down. She wouldn't be like, "But Mom, open the window." Death.
Yeah,
that is not how that works.
Oh no, I could just imagine in a situation of like, say it's like one of those old school grandma type scenarios, where they're just like really crazy. It's like, "Sweetie, just to let you know, you open that window, it's then going to become a race to who kills you first, me or the creature."
Like you have an option. You can either be killed by the creature that's about to kill me too through the window, or I'm gonna take your little butt out right now and make another one of you later. Upgrade. I'm like, hello, Kenny Lowe. How you doing? I'm with Josh. I don't know why you're Josh tonight.
I'm Josh tonight.
I'm with Josh on this one. People make different partner choices based on what's available, especially when it comes to intimacy. If you have the capacity, especially in away type scenarios. Now, see, the problem with that though, Ray, is she's in the orgy house and she already has a partner. They're to the point now where they're engaged. He actually asked her to stay with him, marry him, whatever, forever, because she was kind of making a comment like, what happens if we do get free? We're different people. What's going to happen with us? He's like, all right, bitch, well, you can just marry me, stay with me forever.
I think that's when we were talking about Kenny and the EMT chick.
Oh, okay. Like I said, I'm on the fence on that, because on the one side, I'm glad that they're getting the same representation type story that they would a heterosexual couple. I was just in my feelings that Kenny knew she had a fiance and was still like, fuck that.
Yeah, well, that's why I was pointing out, it's sort of like, stranded on a deserted island type of scenario where it's, she has a fiance, but it's at the same time, you got to think, and I'm sure she thought about it too. It's like,
well, let me ask you this though. Let's be clear.
Are we ever going to get out of here?
But no, like my problem with that is, this is just me. He didn't start doing that until after the radio tower situation, where people were getting hope on getting a signal out. And he was like, oh, we can go. I want to go to Iceland. This is my bucket list. Maybe we can go there together. So you're basically making plans for if you're going to get out, even though she has a fiance on the outside. That is problematic.
It's a lapse of judgment, or, maybe Home Slice is just taking a swing to see if he can get a strike.
What is really funny is that she kept saying Grand Rapids. I'm from Grand Rapids, and I'm from Grand Rapids. And I even told River, I said, that fiance is going to show up. And then as soon as the last scene came, you saw a bus come and it said Grand Rapids. I'm like, there she is. She's here.
What I want to know is how many people are on that bus? Because
seriously, and where the hell are they going to sleep?
We need to see some. Well, we're going to see some throat slashed in the beginning of the first episode of the second season, I'm sure.
I'm sure. Jay was the only good character on the show. He had personality that others didn't. Annoying at times because he's complained a lot, but Mama Lou put him in check. And it's hard because I kind of get it in a way, because it wasn't until the colony house got like messed up and the refugees started having to stay with the Townsies, and you really started to see the Townsies' true colors come out when they were like trying to get their shit. I'm not sharing with you. Like they all were like completely gung-ho to just take all of their resources and put them together. But then when they had to have extra people to feed, or not feed, but extra people living in their house, and all of a sudden it's like, I got to put you in my house and blah, blah, blah. And then they'll act like the situation's not dire and horrible, and it's like, then it started to make more sense what Jay was saying.
I mean, there's, and this is probably an accurate statement. There's only so many Trojans to go around, if you know what I mean.
But no, I think that when Jay was saying people were being, lazy, barbaric, and stupid, he wasn't wrong. He wasn't wrong. The problem with Jade is timing, and he has no filter. He has no filter. He just says whatever comes into his head. But to be clear, so does Jim. And Jim is a-hole a lot of the time. If you really go back and just watch how Jade interacts, especially with Victor, he was actually gonna beat Victor to death in the woods when Victor was out there with his son, and Victor pulled a gun on his ass and he was still going for it. And his wife was like, he has a gun, dumbass, basically. Jim does not listen. Like Jade tried to tell him on multiple occasions in this season that he found a picture of Victor in that town when he was a little boy. I need to talk to Victor. This could be a clue of why we're here. Every time he brought it up, Jim got really anal retentive and angry and saying, why are you here? Blah, blah, blah. Always running his mouth. And it's like,
but to be fair, Jim does acknowledge it later in the episode, or later in the season, when he's just like, one of the biggest when he's talking about one of the biggest issues he has with his wife is that he hears an issue, he tries to fix it. He's not listening. So he does acknowledge it in a way where he's just like, okay, I do have a problem with that.
Yeah. Well, and then also let's talk about the fact really quickly, and I'll go back to the comments in the section. When Victor goes missing after the colony house attack, nobody asked where Victor is. Throughout the rest, only mean, Jade's like, has anyone said Victor? Not Donna, because Donna was giving him little canned peaches and treating him like a child. Nobody asked where the hell Victor went. Nobody. They didn't find his body. So yeah, it's just like Victor's out of sight, out of mind.
I mean, they definitely presented Victor as the loner type. He just exists. He's here.
Yeah,
that's it. So
I just found it very interesting at that point, though.
Like
we were more concerned about the red shirt than him.
House, but he wasn't a part of Colony House. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I mean, we were still more concerned about Eric, the red shirt, than we were about Victor, who was like a major player in the house. I mean, you remember a guy who's out there digging graves.
I mean, the way some of the characters acted around Victor, I think there was definitely some relief when he disappeared. So they're kind of like, yeah, he can go just do whatever he wants. That's cool.
Yeah. But yeah, Kevin, hello, happy Bunny Day.
Our Bunny Day was yesterday.
Oh, that's right. It's Monday in Japan. She speaks Canton. Thank you, Serenity. Victor looks 62. He might be.
He's old. Well, I mean, it had to be at least with the clothing style and stuff. It looked at least the 1950s.
And see, that's what Serenity was saying. Did you notice that all the ghouls are dressed like in the 60s? Some of them look like they were in the 50s, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, 50s, 60s.
But then this goes back to the tree that had the different dates in the bottles. Because he pulled one down. I thought it said like 1800s, like the 1800s or something. I mean, again,
there was, what was it? It was Jade. He saw a vision of was it the Civil War guys?
Yep. He was Jade was in a soldier, a black soldier. I don't know if he was being forced to work for the Confederacy or Union, whatever, but he was chasing him down and went to stab him with the I forgot what it's called, the lance part of the gun.
The bayonet.
Bayonet, thank you. It went to stab him with a bayonet, and then he woke up. And then Jim, again, the a-hole, was like, "What are you doing? Why are you playing around?" I'm like, "That motherfucker, I just had a vision that I got killed. What the hell?" Just like when Jade went into the little mine area, he saw a guy crushed under a boulder.
Yeah.
So
and we forgot to talk about the most nerve-wracking, inducing part of the entire season was where Boyd ends up just right before we go to close. So he goes through the tree. And he ends up in what looks like a completely closed off chimney or whatever.
Yeah.
Tiny little, my anxiety went.
Well, I'm claustrophobic. I can't even get an elevator myself.
That set me off so bad. I'm just like,
yeah.
Throw the blanket off. Throw away the pillow. I need space.
Listen, something's coming. We got to get in the tree. And so she puts him in the tree, and he ends up it literally looks like it's closed. It's almost like, what was it called? The telltale heart, where you hear like the heartbeat in the wall or under the floorboards. He's like in this like enclosed area. Oh my God.
It looks like he's like in a closed off chimney or something. It's all bricked off. But I'm just like, no.
Yeah, that's pretty much where they leave him for the season. He's stuck in there.
And now I'm just wondering how long it's going to take. It's like, wouldn't it be interesting if season 2 just completely ignores the fact that he was ever there? People are just like, hey, whatever happened to Boyd? I don't know. Right before the finale, they just open up a wall and he falls out dead. It's like, ooh, God, no.
Like I said, I mean, it's interesting that because it is called an anywhere tree. So I guess anybody who goes in will go somewhere, anywhere. So then it's not always going to be in the same place. And you can't go into the space together. Can you hold someone's hand and drag them in with you? I wonder what that would have been like, both of them in that case space.
Or what if it was a situation where, let's say Jim was holding his son, clutched and walked through the tree. Will his son suddenly just disappear and go somewhere else, or because he was in such close vicinity with, these are interesting questions. These are definitely interesting questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, if that chimney area is there, then that has to lead to some building. There has to be something there. So I'm really curious. I'm curious where all these spaces are, which is interesting. Is she cuckoo? She's just being manipulated by the ghouls to me. They said it several times in the show by other characters. They whisper and get into your head. I can still hear the whispers. Now, I agree with that, but prior to that, the way she was talking, she says her brother saved her from a very bad situation. But the way they were talking, the way the brother was talking to her, it almost seems like he busted her out of an asylum or something. I think that she was more susceptible to it.
I definitely got an impression like that too, because she said that the whole thing with they didn't start talking to her till after the Matthews got into town.
Yeah. Yeah, and she's
So
been troubled long before that. I mean, I feel like even with Victor, because Victor was so traumatized at a young age, he's more susceptible to hearing the stuff and seeing the things. So I feel like it targets people that are more susceptible to it. And that's
yeah,
probably why she was chosen. I don't think she's just a special one. She's not an angel. She's not any of that stuff. I think she was just already, I hate to say it, but she was mentally damaged from a trauma and it got to her. So yeah, that's what I think's happening. See you live and just want to say hey and happy Easter. Hope you're having a great day. Happy Bunny Day. Let's see. This sounds creepy but interesting. It is very creepy and very interesting.
yeah. I mean, I don't know how much of this you watched, Kevin, but if you get a chance, just go check it out.
Yeah.
I'll
I'll see if I can find the trailer too and put the trailer in the description so you guys can look at
for
it.
sure. It's such a phenomenal show if you love horror.
Yeah, it is amazing. Yeah, Storm's worst nightmare. I don't have claustrophobia, but that place would give it to me. Oh yeah, Roa Moreau did have claustrophobia. Well, you know what? She shares that shit with me. I am terrified of being in enclosed spaces.
And see, here's the thing. Now I'm imagining a scenario where Storm is in the town. She sees the black clouds coming, and she's like, "Nope."
I think Storm would be out of that town in 2 seconds. Like, she'd be zapping everybody.
Oh, dude,
gone.
what is it? Day one, you know she would try to fry the creatures.
Yeah,
like,
I would. You know what? If we're gonna go comic book lore, I think the person that they really need in that town is Raven.
Yeah,
Raven, let me pop down to hell for a second. Ask my daddy what's going on up here.
Hey, Trigun, are these your guys? And then Trigun's like, no, go ask Mephisto. It was Mephisto all along.
We found Mephisto from the MCU. He's in from like Booger. I have a cray theory. The boy in white created this town. That would explain why the electricity is so wrong, because a little kid wouldn't know how things like that work. Huh. I like that, actually.
That's an interesting.
That is interesting. And what are your theories on who the boy in white is? I think he's a non-playable character. He's actually a simulation. I really do. The only reason I'm thinking that he's something on that level is because of the dogs. Because these dogs keep showing up and they're not natural.
Was it he can actually interact with the environment around him? We saw that when Victor was a kid and all the dead bodies were thrown about. The kid was like, "Wee, a merry-go-round, yay! Blood all over the place, but this is still fun."
I mean, honestly, though, they all could be laying in bed with like Force VR things on their head, and this is all a game, and he's just a non-playable character meant to guide you through the story, certain players through the story. I mean,
oh my god!
If this turns into an effing video game,
I mean, it's like okay, you can do the thing from Lost where you set up all the questions, but don't you dare do the island.
Yeah.
Like, you watch that show on Netflix? Good God, that was one of the worst shows that year. Like,
that would be horrible.
It was all VR, none of it's real. But hey, you die in VR, you die for real.
That would be completely messed up. But I mean, honestly, because I don't want to see him as a spirit, a ghost, or anything like that. I don't want to see him as a Grim Reaper. I don't want him to be a white lighter from Charmed. I don't want any of that stuff. I just like the idea that if we're going to give him any clout, video game like Alice in Borderland, yes, kind of like that. Like, what if this is literally what this is? They are all in some kind of pods, and they're all living out the same mass hysteria type situation via a very intricate game that is in play, which explains why the chickens and the cows and all that other stuff like shows up.
Yeah. No, then you get the ending. They come out of the VR and it's just like pretty much one of those deals where it's like, from coming soon to the Sony VR PS5.
Yeah. And like everybody that you thought was literally dead were all like completely awake and they're having coffee and shit. And they're like, oh yeah, we got killed early on in the game. Like, I would be so mad. And that they're all different tiers and levels. Oh, I would be so mad. Oh my gosh. But the sad thing is some of this could actually be that. This could literally be that.
Oh god, I'm scared for the reveal because we don't know how long the show's gonna go on either. So that's another thing too.
Yeah, I'm very, very scared on what
the
actual reveal is.
And I think at the very end, that's what made the Lost finale even worse. was the fact it went on so long. If they had done that maybe 2 seasons or something like that, I'd have been like, okay, it's a joke.
Yeah,
Not a
and
great
see,
ending, but so fun.
I'm also in a show, like into a show called Manifest. It's one of River's shows that he got into it first and then he brought me into it. And it's just we watched all the seasons. We're waiting for the latest season on Netflix to come out. It is a very good show. People were basically went on an airplane and then they were missing for like 5 years in time. For them, it was only like a day, but it was 5 years.
Well, to them, it was the length of the actual flight.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the length of the flight also indicates how long you have to live, Pat, when you're actually back in the real world. And so, like, they actually start hearing these things called callings that would tell them to go help people and accomplish different things. And like, they still have the mystery of why they're there. Why, it's absolutely insane, especially since at one point in the show, spoiler 1, 2, 3, they find parts of the plane that they initially flew back in on. So how does their plane damaged in the in the water if they flew back on the plane, and everybody sees them and is interacting with them? Essentially, wouldn't they be dead? So like, it's just so much, and so Manifest is such a great show. And it's another show that is a mind fuck. I hate to say it that way. And this is another one. Just
that's like a good explanation for it. It's very much what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a mind fuck. So I love it, but that's what it is.
It poses very interesting questions and is giving you little snippets of it. And it's a show, though, I hope doesn't go on too long.
Yeah, it doesn't go on. And like, I think this is probably going to be the last season. It got canceled on, I think it was NBC or whatever channel. And then
I remember it got canceled and then it got picked up by another network.
Yep. So if you want to see it, it's going to be on Netflix. Let's see. Laugh Out Loud Lost was very disappointing. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to set up a mystery, the payoff better be worth it. Absolutely. And with my theory, he is like Franklin Richards and can create his own universe. And he died after creating somehow and is now a spirit. Hey, I would be okay with that if he was like Franklin Richards. If this was all a concoction of him, kind of like that boy in the Twilight Zone movie where he was controlling his parents and making reality TV shows, I would be completely okay with that.
He's just literally an Omega level mutant that is just like, I'm just gonna play with these people.
Yep, I would be okay with that, but they cannot be in a video game.
The boy is Wanda.
I have to put it down
all over again.
Yeah, I can't. I just cannot have him being it. I can't have any of them just being in a collective VR simulation because I can't handle that anymore. I just can't do it. It's too many. There's too many people use that trope. I can't do it anymore.
Like if the boy ends up some kind of omnipotent being and stuff that can control reality, I'll be all right with that.
Yeah, I want to know why he still actually selected these people, because that's still not explaining that. Why are you doing that per se? But yeah, on top of that, I'd be like, I don't know.
Oh no, here you go. Series finale. The boy in white goes up to the Matthews family and goes, "I'm exactly what your baby would have looked like if I had lived."
I'm like, no, you're not. Like, wrong show. I'm sorry. The people you were trying to reach are not here. But no, I actually, like I said, I'm enjoying the journey. I'm just hoping that the destination pays off in the end with the show.
Yeah, because that's a lot of times where shows like this will end up flubbing as the end because all these writers, they got these really interesting ideas like, yo, we start doing these really cool, interesting questions, and then they're pitching the show and the studio's like, great, cool, how's it gonna end? I don't know, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yep, we have absolutely no idea how we're ending it. We just had all these plot points for season 1 and we have no idea what's going to happen going forward. So I'm like, Russo brothers, what the hell? They're going to have to go into timeout again. That's all I'm saying. But we have hope that they have learned from their mistakes in the past and that this is going to be something they've done to make
hopefully their time in the MCU has helped them craft their writing and stuff like that.
And they're like, because the time travel thing, I'm still not okay with that. Like their definition of time travel in the MCU. So like, I'm just hoping that, we've learned from these past mistakes and now we're fixing it in this one. And we're like, this is our apology to all the people that have stuck with us even during times when we were screwing up. So, I'm just hoping that's what that's about. Fingers crossed, but you never know. But all right, guys, we are almost to an hour and 40 minutes. So I think that's a good enough time to talk about From and just cut off. But I am going to put the trailer in the description after this ends, so you guys can see the trailer for it. If you don't have Epics, I think they're still doing their trial. It's a 7-day trial. Plenty of time now to watch 10 episodes. So make sure you do it when you have a block of time, but still very, very, very good show. Please check it out, because I would love to know what you guys think, what other theories you have about the show after you've seen it. If you haven't watched it, if you have watched it, keep putting those theories down, because I love the show. I can talk about the show forever. So yeah, let us know.
Read it later.
Yeah, talk about it later. Make sure you go to Joe's channel, Joe's Geek Show. If you have not liked and subscribed to his channel, because he has awesome content, especially if you're into comic books and really cool, funny shorts and movie and TV reviews. Pop over there. And he's in Japan, so that's just cool. All right, guys. Yeah, we're gonna cut it out, but I do have I owe you guys my Owl House video. I know I'm behind the Flash. I'm trying, guys. I have to pep talk myself to do those 2 episode reviews. I mean, Kung Fu I'm behind on, but I can pick that up. If I have to, the Flash, I have to really talk myself into it. So
yeah,
I'm gonna try and get the video out.
Do the Flash. You gotta do the Flash next. That has to be your next video. Do the Flash.
I thought you were my friend, Joe, but I see now you're just not. Oh my God. So
I live for the torture.
Don't torture me. So, but I'm going to do my best to try and talk about the last 2 episodes of The Flash and get that video out for you guys this week. And then I have a few other videos posting too. So be on the lookout. It is coming. And also Kenny Lowe, who may still be in here, we're going to be doing another Charmed video, I believe, on Friday on his channel. We did one this week. We're going to have another conversation about Charmed coming up this Friday, since Charmed is not going to be aired this week. And also we're going to have a Sailor Moon chat on my channel. So be on the lookout for those streams coming up. And of course, me and Joe will be back to talk about more Moon Knight, I'm sure, moving forward, and other videos. So yay, it is great. Kung Fu has to be next video, as I'm catching up with that show. It will be next, because I have an easier time talking about Kung Fu than I do about The Flash. So be on the lookout this week, guys. It is coming. All right, guys. If it is day for you, have a good day. If it is night for you, have a good night. And we will see you in the next videos and in the next stream. Bye.